Shalom. Giving all praises to Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachahakorash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. And I wanted to address this video that was sent to me. All right, as you can see on the screen, the name Japheth. And then it says, according to scripture, all right? And pretty much this has been an ongoing argument, since I've come in, even before I came in, all right? These arguments have always popped up, tying the so-called white man who rules this current age. As we know, the scriptures say Esau is the end of this age or this world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Okay, so as we tie the biblical Edomites to the so-called white man that rules the earth today, which we believe through faith, all right, first and foremost, all right, that they are Edomites. But the evidence and the proof is in the pudding. All right, as we go into prophecy, all right, we know Japheth, all right, which was one of the sons of Noah that survived the flood, is not tied, okay, to any end time prophecy. There is no major captivity that we will be in under Japheth outside of the Medes. When you go into the Medes, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Medes were a Japhetic people, and they were dark-skinned, okay? So we're going to listen to a little bit of this video that this guy has, because basically the argument is that the so-called white man that rules the earth today is not an Edomite. He's actually Japheth. All right, based upon the term Ashkenaz or Ashkenazi Jew, all right, as these small hats, a group of them, all right, label themselves that. We're going to show you the error in that doctrine, all right, because as Ashkenaz, as we'll show you, comes from Japheth, you can't be a Japhetic Shemite because the Jews come from Shem, right? Even the Edomites come from Shem when you go down the line. All right, but Japheth, you would have to come from the line of Japheth, all right? And that's where Ashkenaz comes from. And we'll show you what we're talking about. But let's listen to a little bit of this, and then we'll get into the scriptures and cut the doctrine. And hopefully you brothers and sisters are edified, all right? Because all these individuals do, all right, is pop up, all right, and try to basically undermine the true laborers who have been on the highways and the byways, pushing this word, all right, going in week in and week out, day in and day out. And then you have these sideline cats, all right, that'll just pop up, all right, and try to undermine everything we say. And then they're the true authorities, all right. And to save Esau, to save the so-called white man, they want to put the term Japheth on him because there's no hardcore judgment tied to Japheth as there's a hardcore judgment tied to Esau. So they're trying to take the heat off of that guy. And it's not going to work. But let's listen.
Japheth for a second. All right, let's look at Japheth for a second. Now we're going to just dissect this thing here. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tiras. And Gomer's sons were Ashkenaz, and Ripha, and Togarmah. Now, we know that Japheth became the father of the Caucasian race, the offspring of Japheth.
See that? Japheth became the father of the so-called white race. That's basically what he's saying. All right.
Occupied, according to scriptures, the Isle of the Gentiles, the territories of the Mediterranean Sea in Europe and parts of Asia Minor, whence they dispersed north.
The original Japhites, the dark Japhites, the Minoans, they are the original inhabitants of Europe, all right? Even before the Greeks took over that land, all right, that was the land of Japheth, all right? The Japhites got a large area of territory, but we have to understand that the biblical Edomites prophetically would rape, rob, and murder and take over these territories and even put the names of these particular nations on himself. You see? But let's keep listening.
Went over the entire continent of Europe and the great part of Asia. Okay? Now, Japheth's descendants traveled west north and northeast of the mountain Ararat and the Caucasus Mountains. Okay, they journeyed to southeast Russia, and along Europe to Spain. Gomer descendants also settled in Ireland, Scotland, and places north of the Black Sea. Magog was the father of the Magogites, known as the Scythians.
Right, and when you go to these lands, this is where the Japhites originally inhabited. Okay, even the area of Russia. These lands originally belonged to Japheth. Okay, but who raped, robbed, and murdered and took over those lands was the biblical Edomites. Okay, when you get into prophecy, he conquered all nations, kindred, tongues, and people, including the holy people. Okay, and with every nation he conquered, he took their culture. Even when he, you go into the Greeks, the so-called white man, as he conquered, even when you look at the Ptolemaic Empire, when they conquered Egypt, they sat on the throne as pharaohs. That's why you go into history and you see certain pharaohs were white, so-called white men, and even women, right? That's because the Greeks took over the culture, all right? Not only did they take down the Egyptians, they took their culture, and this is what Esau Edom has been known to do, right? But let's keep listening, then we'll get into the scriptures.
From Javan, the fourth son of Japheth, came all the Greeks. Okay, Meshach and Tubal are associated with Georgia and South Russia. Okay, are you with me? Japheth's grandson Ashkenaz formed the Germanic race. In the Hebrew language, the word means German. The Ashkenaz or the Ashkenazi Jews are not the tribe of Yehuda.
All right. So what they base it on, all right, when you get into the scriptures, all right, because you have what is known as the Ashkenazi Jew, right? What is the Ashkenazi Jew? All right. It says Ashkenazi Jews are a major ancestral group of Jewish people who originated in Central and Eastern Europe, including Germany, Poland, and Russia. The term Ashkenazi comes from the 10th century when Jews settled, all right, in Rhineland region of Western Germany. Today, about half of the world's Jewish population identifies as Ashkenazi. So because this term Ashkenazi Jew is thrown around, okay, people say, well, when you go into the scriptures, Ashkenaz descends from Japheth. All right. Now, after the flood, you have Genesis, the 10th chapter. The descendants of Noah, all right, were accounted through his sons, all right, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Genesis 10:1. These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Unto them were sons born after the flood. So if you follow the lineage, the first thing you should understand is that you can't be a Shemitic, Japhetic person. That doesn't make any sense. Because as you go down the line, the descendants of Japheth are accounted. Verse 2, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Midia, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, Tiras, which in prophecy, these names are mentioned. All right, but who is inhabiting those lands today are Edomites, right? It said even Rome, the territory of Rome was originally inhabited, all right, by Romulus and Remus, right? The Japhetic people, okay? Dark-skinned people. But those lands were taken over and conquered by Esau. See? As you keep going, as it says, and the sons of Gomer, which is one of the sons of Japheth, Ashkenaz. So what these people are saying is that because we see this term Ashkenaz, all right, associated with Japheth, the people who are calling themselves Ashkenazi Jews, all right, are Japhetic people. This is one of their main claims to fame, right? Now, they're proclaiming that they're Jews, right? Now, who do the Jews descend from? The Jews descend from Noah's son, all right, Shem. Okay, and the Bible is giving you all of the descendants that came from the survivors of the flood through Noah. So you have the descendants of Japheth, you have the descendants of Ham, starting at verse 6, and then you have the descendants of Shem. All right, when you follow the descendants of Shem, all right, through Arphaxad, ultimately you eventually get Eber, right? And it goes all the way up when you follow the story to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which that's where you get the Jews, all right? That's where you get the Jews. So even though these devils ain't the true Jews, okay? These devils aren't the true Jews. They stem from Esau, which is a Shemitic people, okay? Because Abraham had Isaac, Isaac had Jacob and Esau. Jacob was the chosen. Now, these devils who are proclaiming that they are the Jews are basically saying that they are Jews and descendants of Jews who were scattered in the area associated with Ashkenaz, which, as you can see here, is Germany, Poland, and Russia, right? It says Ashkenazi Jews are a major group of Jewish people. Now, the Jews, they're claiming that they're Jews. These devils who say that they're Ashkenazi Jews, their claim is not that they're of the seed of Ashkenaz, which is associated with Japheth. Okay? As we go here, right? Again, Japheth had a son named Gomer. Gomer, all right, had a son named Ashkenaz, right? Let's look up Ashkenaz. These are Japhetic people. The people who are calling themselves Ashkenazi Jew are not claiming to be of the seed of Japheth. They are merely claiming we are Jews that come from the area that is associated, all right, with the tribe of Japheth, all right, Ashkenaz, which that is the area of Germany, Poland, so forth, all right. The word Ashkenaz, all right, a man as sprinkled fire, as scattered, a descendant of Japheth. Okay, so as these devils are calling themselves Ashkenazi Jews, they're merely saying our forefathers, we are descendants of the Jews who were in the land of Ashkenaz, which is Germany, Poland, and Russia. They are not saying that we are the seed of Japheth. They are claiming they are the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which they're not the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. Okay? They are not, because you can't be an Ashkenazi Jew. That's an oxymoron, as the Jews descend from Shem, right? Follow me? The Jews descend from Shem, right? Ashkenazi descends from Japheth. So you can't be a Japhetic, Shemitic person when we're reading how these different nations were dispersed and accounted for after the flood. You have the descendants of Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth. Then it gives you the descendants of Japheth. Then it gives you the descendants of Ham and their sons and grandsons. Then it gives you the descendants of Shem. Okay? The descendants of Shem through Arphaxad, as we get Genesis, the 11th chapter. All right? Genesis 11 and 10. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad, all right, 2 years after the flood. All right, and Shem lived and begot Arphaxad. And as you continue this lineage, you get Eber, which is where we get the term Hebrew, the Hebrews, all right, which Abram was called a Hebrew. And then as you go all the way down this lineage, okay, you get Terah, who was Abram's father, Abram, all right, eventually on down the line has Isaac. Isaac has Jacob and Esau, and Jacob was the chosen. All right. Jacob has ultimately his fourth son is Judah. Let's look it up. Genesis 29 and 35. And she conceived again and bare a son. And she said, now will I praise Yahweh. Therefore she called his name Yahwadah and left bearing. So this is the beginning of being a Jew. This is the tribe of Judah. That's where being a Jew comes from. So you cannot be a Japhetic, right, Jew. That doesn't make any sense. What people don't understand is that these devils aren't claiming to be the seed of Ashkenaz. They're claiming to be the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all right, which they're wrong. But you all are even more wrong when you try to take the term Ashkenazi and make it as if that's the reason that we can say the people who are calling themselves Ashkenazi Jews are really Japheth. No. All right. It says Ashkenazi Jews are a major ancestral group of Jewish people. They're claiming to be Jewish, not Japhetic, who originated in Central and Eastern Europe, including Germany, Poland, and Russia. Okay? Okay, so here is a map of Central Europe, right? And when you look at these lands, these were all Japhetic lands when it comes to inheritance. These lands belong to the seed of Japheth, but what has Esau done? All right, let's get the book of Micah, the 2nd chapter, right? Micah, the 2nd chapter. All right, in the 1st verse, it says, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. Okay? And they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away, so that they oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage. See? This is what they do. All right? And when we get the book of Revelation, let's get the book of Revelation, the 13th chapter. This is what they did. Revelation 13 and 7. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindred and tongues and nations. So through the sword, Esau, Edom, all right, conquered these particular lands, all right, and called them his own. Okay? And you had descendants of Esau, Edom, okay, who over the years eventually converted to what is known as Judaism, okay, and eventually started calling themselves Jews. So they're not claiming to be the descendants of Japheth. They are claiming to be the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, okay? Let's prove it. Let's go to this Wikipedia article. It says Ashkenazi Jews, also known as Ashkenazi Jews or Ashkenazism, or is a constitute of Jewish diaspora. See, they're saying they're the Jews. You can't be of the seed of Japheth and a Jew at the same time. They're claiming that their forefathers are Jews who come from the land of Ashkenaz. And this is where a lot of you people, all right, mess up. You see the term Ashkenaz and you see these people calling themselves Ashkenazi Jews and you say, oh, they're the seed of Japheth. Well, prophetically, that doesn't hold up because prophetically, outside of the Medes, Japheth has no weight in end time prophecy. All right. And the Medes, that's not even end time prophecy. You see? And when you go to the lands associated with where Japheth originally received inheritance, okay, Gog, Magog, who is in those lands today? Right? Because the original Gog and Magog were Japheth. Okay? But who is in that land ruling today is the Edomites. You see? And this thing has to be received spiritually. You all have been saying this whole same argument all of these years, and you have yet to come to the conclusion, okay, you can't be Japhetic and a Jew. Right? You people are completely out of your minds, man. Okay, it says constitute a Jewish diaspora that emerged in the Holy Roman Empire and at the end of the first millennium. Okay, they traditionally speak Yiddish, a language which is German mixed with a little Hebrew mixed with all kind of other madness, which is a created language, and they never get questioned on their, that Yiddish garbage. But here it is, y'all sit up here and follow us around, mocking us for having a Lashawan Kodash, the holy tongue. All right, when these devils have added, all right, all manner, okay, as you see here, Yiddish is a Judeo-German. So it's Hebrew mixed with German dialect. A Western Germanic language historically spoken by Ashkenazi Jews. Okay? It originated in the 9th century in Central Europe and provided a nascent Ashkenazi community with a vernacular based on High German fused with many elements from Hebrew. So these were Edomites in Germany, in these different regions in Central Europe, taking on the identity of being a Jew, and even created a language called Yiddish that nobody questions. Okay? And again, the Ashkenazi Jews, right? As you can see here, these are Edomites. These are Edomites. This is not the seed of Japheth. Neither are they claiming to be the seed of Japheth. And again, prophetically, we know Esau is the end of the world. So if you're saying we're at the end and we're getting ready to be delivered, okay, well, the people that are in rulership would have to be Edomites. And we have a lesson when we go way deeper into it, prophetic wise. All right, if you want that lesson, all you have to do is just go to my page and type in Japheth. All right, you go to the page and type in Japheth. All right, here's the class here we did. Prophecy proves Japheth isn't the so-called white man, because really prophetically is where you can really attack this doctrine, because prophetically Japheth holds no weight. Prophetically, the final captivity of the Israelites, okay, would be under the Edomites. Let's get the book of Lamentations, the 4th chapter, right? Lamentations 4:21. Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, that dwellest in the land of Uz. The cup shall also pass through unto thee, and thou shalt be drunken, and shalt make thyself naked. The punishment of thy iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion. He will no more carry thee away into captivity. He will visit thine iniquity, O daughter of Edom. He will discover thy sins. So the punishment of our captivity is up, all right, under the hands of Esau, Edom. Okay, Obadiah, right? The book of Obadiah tells us what? All right, the last verse, and saviors, verse 21, shall come up upon the Mount Zion to judge the mount of Esau, and the kingdom shall be the Lord. So the kingdom will be the Lord's through the fall of Esau, Edom. Okay, again, the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter, in the 19th verse, Egypt shall be a desolation, symbolic for America, and Edom shall be a desolate wilderness for the violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. Okay? Another one. Let's get the book of Jeremiah. All right, but then it says, but Judah shall dwell forever in Jerusalem from generation to generation. So our kingdom comes, all right, through a judgment tied to the Edomites in their rulership, not the Japhites. Japheth does not have any pull in end-time prophecy. End-time prophecy is directly linked to Esau, which if we're at the end, who's ruling right now? Again, if these people who are ruling right now, the so-called white man, all right, the small hat, are not the Edomites, then that would mean we have to wait until whoever this nation is falls, and then the Edomites raise up, then the end comes. See, which makes no sense. See, prophetically is really where you attack this doctrine, because they can't go into a prophecy and say what the so-called white man has done to us and what he's doing to this current and link that to Japheth. We can go into the Bible and link what the so-called white man did and is continually doing to the Edomites. Point blank, period. Not to Japheth. Let's get the book of Jeremiah 49:17. It says, also, Edom shall be a desolation, and everyone that goeth by it shall be astonished and shall hiss at the plagues thereof. Again, this is clearly tied to the judgment of Babylon the Great. As in the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, said the Lord, no man shall abide there, neither shall a son of man dwell there. This is the same judgment for Babylon. Let's get Jeremiah 50. Should be Jeremiah 50 and 40. Isaiah 13 and 22. And the wild beast. This is speaking of the judgment tied to Babylon, because Esau, Edom, the biblical Edomites run Babylon the Great. They're the ones who rule Babylon the Great. So just as we just read, okay, the judgment tied to Edom is that ultimately, as Sodom and Gomorrah was overthrown, so shall their kingdom be overthrown. Edom shall be a desolate wilderness. Then you go to Jeremiah 50. Who's this talking about? Babylon. And what does it say? Verse 39, NLT says, soon Babylon will be inhabited by desert animals and hyenas. It shall be a home for owls. Never again will people live there. It will lie desolate forever, showing you that this hasn't happened. But again, this judgment is not only tied to Esau, but it's tied to Babylon, because Babylon is ran by the Edomites, which is the so-called white man. He is not Japhetic. Okay, because that will soften the blow on his judgment. If he was Japhetic, then okay, let's go into the prophecy. Where is a hardcore judgment tied to Japheth? Where is a hardcore captivity, all right, outside of the Medes? Because we were in captivity under the Medes, who are a Japhetic people, right? But where is a hardcore judgment tied to the Japhetic people for what they did to us? And now we know all nations are going to be judged, but Esau has a special place of judgment in prophetic scriptures. As God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord, all right, shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. Okay? So again, Esau, Edom is going to be a desolation. Okay? And then there's various end time prophecies that basically tie to the Edomites. I mean, we're looking at them. Isaiah the 34th chapter, right? Let's get that. Isaiah 34 and 10. As a matter of fact, let's go, and this is speaking of a future judgment. God's wrath upon the nations, man. Okay? This is Isaiah 34 and 4, which can be linked with Revelation, the 6th chapter. And the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and shall be rolled together as a scroll of destruction, and all their hosts shall fall down as a leaf falleth off the vine, as a failing fig from the fig tree. And my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea, upon the people of my curse to judgment. So their argument is that this can't be talking about the so-called white race, because they're Ashkenazi Jew. They're Japhetic people. See that? The sword, all right, let's read it in the NLT. The sword of the Lord is drenched with blood and covered with fat, with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fats of rams prepared for sacrifice. Yes, the Lord will offer a sacrifice in Bosra, who will make a slaughter in Edom, a mighty slaughter, man. See that? Point blank period. I mean, you can keep going. The streams of Edom, verse 9, show what? Verse 8, for it is the day, oh my goodness. Verse 8, NLT, for it is the day of the Lord's revenge, in the year when Edom will be paid back for what it did to Israel. So the judgment coming is tied to the judgment, all right, of the Edomites. Yeah, all of the nations, but Esau, Edom has a special judgment, and that marks our final captivity, man. The streams of Edom will be filled with pitch of burning fire, all right, filled with burning pitch, and the ground will be covered with fire. This is what's coming to America. The judgment of Edom will never end, all right, and its smoke of this burning will rise forever. Again, this is directly tied to the judgment of Babylon the Great. So where is Babylon the Great? Where is Babylon the Great? Revelation 18 and 18. And cried when they saw the smoke of his burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? Revelation 19 and 3. And they said, hallelujah, her smoke rose up forever and ever. Again, this is tied to the judgment of Esau. Right? So again, where is Babylon the Great according to you all? And where can you link Japheth ruling Babylon the Great? You can't. But we can link Esau to Babylon the Great, because Esau is the nation associated with ruling Babylon the Great. Okay, so this whole talking point of an Ashkenazi Jew is really a misinterpretation, because that term Ashkenazi is there. They say, well, those are the seed of Japheth. No. First of all, these people aren't claiming to be the seed of Japheth, which is associated with Ashkenaz. They're claiming to be the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. Okay, but they couldn't be, there's no such thing as an Ashkenazi Jew. You do have literal seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that's scattered amongst these lands. But this argument is played out, okay, and ultimately it holds no weight. And all you people are trying to do is figure out a way to lighten up the blow on the so-called white race, the Edomites. Okay, and we know that certain Israelites are going to come looking like so-called white people. But the Edomite race, all right, is tied to the judgment associated with Babylon the Great, not Japheth. Okay, there's no scripture that says Japheth is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So this is a false, played out doctrine. And again, if you want to go deeper into this and get more, all right, girth and depth, all right, here's a lesson. And then all you have to do is just type in GMS Japheth. Let's just type that in and see what comes up. Great Millstone and Japheth. Boom. The Apostle Ramlab has a video. He has a longer video, but as you see, that's how the original Japhethites looked. All right. The original Japhethites, they're dark-skinned people. Today, they would be the Polynesians, the Samoans, all right, and so forth. Okay, Tongans. Those are the original Japhethites, man. Okay? And again, prophetically, we wouldn't be in no hardcore captivity under Japheth. It would be Esau. All right? GMS Holland. Genesis 10, Shem, Ham, Japheth today with scriptures. Okay? Hebrew Israelites among Japheth. GMS Chayal in this truth. All right, GMS Esau, you are not Israel / Japheth continued. And this, Esau is not Japheth. Skid Row, the elder in Chicago, who is Japheth today. There's many videos we have on this topic. Okay? We have many videos on this topic. Boom, this brother uploaded. Okay, oh man, I remember this one. Esau is not Japheth, destroyed GMS London. I remember that one. This brother uploaded Apostle Ramlabs, who is Japheth. Okay, so look these videos up if you want to go deeper into it. This was just kind of like a basic video, but I remember this one.
These so-called white people, man. For any of the so-called white men that descends back to Esau.
You prove that?
Yeah, Genesis 25. Yeah. There's many scriptures on it, bro. So
the Edomites, all right, descend from Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. Okay, they're the personification of evil, and they're the ones who run this captivity. So that's that. Lord willing, y'all will edify. Y'all check these videos out. I posted if y'all want, further edification. Shalom.